Saturday, April 13th, 1912. By noontime, Titanic had sailed 519 miles since her last noontime report the day prior, and over 1,000 miles since leaving Ireland behind. The ship had sped up, and with the fact that so many boilers were still not lit and the ship was already going faster than expected, rumors started to pass among the passengers and crew that they might actually arrive in New York a day early. Now, let's be clear about what arriving in New York a day early actually means. There's a light ship, which is essentially a lighthouse on a ship, off the New York harbor. The duration of the voyage is counted from the light ship of your departure to the light ship of your arrival, not necessarily berth to berth. If Titanic reaches that light ship, that officially counts as the voyage being over. If Titanic reaches that light ship early, they would essentially lower anchor and wait there until their scheduled berth opens up. It's also on this day that a coal fire, which was smoldering in one of the bunkers since they left Belfast, has finally been put out. This was done by shifting coal from two of Titanic's starboard coal bunkers and putting them into the port coal bunkers. About 300 tons were removed from the starboard side, and those 300 tons were put into the port side, so essentially a displacement of 600 tons. This had a noticeable effect on the ship's trim. She was essentially leaning 3 degrees over to her port side. This was noticed by second-class passenger Lawrence Beasley. An interesting event occurred in Titanic's first class today. The grand staircase had recently been mopped, and as most of you know, the floors of the grand staircase and several other parts of the ship were made of linoleum. And wet linoleum gets slippery, especially when the ship is now off balance by 3 degrees and rolling slightly in the waves. First-class passenger Irene Harris was walking down the steps of the grand staircase when she stepped on one of these wet spots, and she slipped, and she tumbled, and she fell all the way down to the landing and broke her arm. She was carried over to the ship's hospital on sea deck, where Dr. O'Loughlin treated her and patched her up in time for her to be teased by her fellow shipmates at the dinner table. Quite an eventful day so far. Did you think the night would go by uneventfully? Well, you're wrong. At about 11 o'clock, the Marconi machine broke down. Chief Telegraph Operator John Phillips was at the key, sending messages to various ships nearby, when it just stopped working. Now they lost their communication with the outside world. The Marconi manual says, "Do not fix it. You guys are geeks. We know you're cocky. You're gonna make it worse. Don't touch it. Let a repairman work on it when the ship arrives to shore." Not in those words, but essentially that. So what did Chief Operator John Phillips and his assistant Harold Bride do? Well, like all tech geeks in their early 20s, they ignored the rules, and they started trying to fix it. They worked late into the night. In fact, they didn't finish until 4:30, which is technically tomorrow, but I'm saying it in this video. It turns out the leads from the secondary of the transformer had burned through their casing and burned out. With some rubber tape, they were able to fix this. Could you have imagined if at the time Titanic began to sink the following night, they didn't have their telegraph system operating? Thanks to Phillips and Bride technically breaking the rules and fixing the machine themselves, they had this Marconi machine at their disposal to send out the distress calls. Now, they would have probably operated off the emergency set, but that had a much more limited range, and it's very likely most ships in the area, perhaps including the Carpathia, would not have been able to talk with them. Except then they wouldn't have told the Californian to piss off, because then they wouldn't have been communicating with Cape Race, and therefore Californian might have still been online when the ship hit the iceberg. Okay, that's a rabbit hole I don't want to go down. That's it. The day ended. Good night.